Alright bashers, we've discovered a problem here at the channel, and what it is the way we store our RCs works for most of them, but if you have any frailties in any of your fluid retention systems like shock absorbers, storing them at the wrong angle can be a problem, and we ran into that with this one. Now, this is the Cen Racing Reeper, and we use the Creighton 8S tires and wheels on it. They just seem to perform better, they handle better, and they work really well. The balance is good for them, but look at the shine on that. See how shiny that is? That's because this is bathed in shock oil. So we've got a pretty good shock leak on this. In this video, we're gonna go ahead and find out what's wrong with the shock absorbers and get that fixed and refilled. This shouldn't be a very long video, but it's something we all run into once in a while. Check this out. So let's get down on the bench and find out where this leak is. Here's the leak. It's in this one here someplace, and the one on the back also has a leak in here somewhere because there's oil all over the bottom of this, and this spreads. So it can be a little difficult to locate because it's spread all the way across the top of this, but the leak is on this particular shock absorber up front and this one in the back, and there's one way to see if that's accurate, and we just take this, and this one shouldn't have any sound to it. Has just a little bit. Okay, so just that's right at the very top. That's where the air cavity would be. So it does have a little bit of a bubble there. This one over here has a bubble as well. So this one has a different bubble there. When you come to this side, that one has no air in it at all. And this one over here, there it is. And that one's got a pretty significant bubble in there, so you can feel that. So we know that this one's low. It seems like both of these up front are a little bit low on oil because you can hear it. So it's definitely leaking from this one. And it looks like it's leaking from that one too. So even though it's dry, it's not completely dry, but even though it's pretty dry up front here, it looks like we're going to have to take both of these apart. Now, these have an interesting design, and these have been modded because when these come out of the factory, this little collar at the bottom, and this is the one that has the O-rings at the bottom that does the compression on the O-rings to keep it from leaking down below. There's an O-ring at the top, and there's O-rings here, and those are what keep the oil inside. These have been swapped over to the aluminum upgrades because when these shocks, there's a little rubber collar right down here. It's a fairly dense one, but in order to keep it from throwing off drive lines, it stops it right there. So this will actually travel farther. The problem is when you travel farther than that, it spits the drive lines out, and that's just inherent in this vehicle. We've tried different shock absorbers, and it was really hard to get it to stop in the right place so that it wouldn't spit out the drive lines, and the stock shock absorbers actually work the best for this situation. And this little collar down at the bottom, this little rubber boot right there, that is what keeps things from coming apart when you have a decent landing. So the upgrade was necessary here because this piece here destroyed the plastic one, and these come with a plastic one from the factory in there. So we upgraded this to the metal ones. So we're going to go ahead and take this one off, and we're going to have a look at it, and we'll get a look at the O-rings and everything, and then we're going to do all of them. We're going to show you on the first one what needs to be done. All right, before we tear into this one, here's the original shock from this, and it doesn't have this little piece in it. So this is this rubber spacer that prevents it from traveling too far. That's as far as it goes. That's necessary, and we had to take it out of this one and put in this one when we replaced it because this one was broken. So here's what happens here. Now, this vehicle does not bottom out, so it lands right on the full shock pressure, and that's a bad thing. But here is the plastic piece that comes with it, and it just doesn't handle the pressure. It just can't take it, and they actually sell the aluminum upgraded to what we put in there. This is the O-ring that we need to check on this one to make sure it's not leaking, and it sits right up here, but there's also another one right there that this should thread up to and make contact with. So when we do the other one, we're going to have to check this. These little plastic ones can be really hard to thread, but once you get them started, they'll spin up. Now the problem being, This is just not standard. It's not going to be okay. So we upgraded that one. That's why we did that. So now we're going to go ahead and pull the other one apart and see what the issue is there. That behind us, let's go ahead and take this apart. Now, as always with the shock absorbers, you just pull this back and you turn this collar and take it off like so. And so there's your spring collar. Spring slides right off, and here's that piece that I was telling you about right there. And it seems like the oil softened it quite a bit, so it may not do the job anymore, because what happens is this is supposed to stop it. But as soft as this is now, because it's been saturated with oil, look at how it bulges. Look at that. I don't know if that's actually going to hold it anymore. We'll have to see when we get it out in the field. But that's not okay, and it actually pushed it over the top of that. It wouldn't do it with the collar on it, but that's a lot softer than it used to be. Now, this is our part right here, and it feels like it's still on there good. So that shouldn't be an issue. You can feel the air cavity in there. Let's check the top. This is just feeling it. Ooh. I bet that's where it was at. The top was loose. It wasn't cranked all the way down to the O-ring, so I'm pretty sure that was our problem. Let's go ahead and drain it out. And I like to use these little glass little bowls right here because you can see right through it and see what's up with your oils. So let's go ahead and just spin this off. There we go. Just like that. And yes, it is low on oil, quite a bit low actually. But the oil still looks brand new, so that's nice. We don't have a lot of dirt and debris in there. So the oil is clean, no damage there, and this has been run quite a bit. The O-ring on the side here, if you look, you can see the O-ring right in the threads there. You have to get into that to prevent the leakage. Here we go. Just like that. So now that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and let this drain, so we'll pull this all the way up and set it like that, and we'll let it drain out. And we'll drain the lid there. Now the cool thing about this is there's a small screw right here, and if you want to get all of the oils out, or all of the air out of the oil, I can show you how to do that with this when we go ahead to set that up. So we're going to take a few minutes here, and we're going to let all of this drain onto the mat. Alright, so with the drainage complete, let's go ahead and wipe this out just a little bit. Dry it up. Just clean it out a little bit here, just so that it doesn't get on everything. So that's pretty good. It's not completely dry, but close enough. There we go. All right. So now we're going to back this off a little bit and have a look at the O-ring, and that just for, we have it apart, we might as well have a look at it. So just going to back this up a little bit, like that. And now it should spin by hand. Here we go. And we were right up against the O-ring there, which is nice. And that's the O-ring up top here. That's what seals it from the top part of this. Let me back this off. There we go. And there's the O-ring on the inside right there. And it's seated just exactly where it should be seated. So everything looks pretty good in there. I don't see any damage. There's the stopper that holds the O-ring in place, and this is what tightens up against it right there. So we're going to go ahead and assemble this again, put it back together. Let's get it threads lined up. There we go. Be really careful not to cross thread this, especially if you're working with the plastic ones, because they cross thread super easy. So the metal ones are really nice because they find the threads and chase them real easy. Much better than the plastic one. There we go. Let's go ahead and snug this down. Now you don't want to crank it down super tight. You're only going up against a little piece of rubber there. So you want to get it right up against the housing, like that. And I didn't put a lot of pressure on that. Everything is flowing nice and smoothly. It feels pretty good. No wear inside. That should be just fine. So before we go into this for refilling this and showing you how to get all the air out of it, let's inspect this O-ring up at the threads here. Now this one is right embedded in the threads. There's a little groove in there for it, so we want to have a look all the way around. Make sure there's no nicks, no damage. Everything needs to be nice and smooth to prevent the leakage. And this one looks really good all the way around, so we shouldn't have a problem. And I like a fairly light shock fluid. We're going to go with 27.5, and since we're doing both of the front ones, we'll even that out with these, but we're going to use this fluid here. And the trick to this is when you put this in here, you want to fill it partially. You don't want to fill it all the way up and have the plunger down in there like that. It is one gripe I have with these containers is the plastic is so thick that it's hard to squeeze them and get the fluid out. Sometimes it's just easier to take this off like that so you can actually pour it in. There we go. Now I'm down a little ways from the top, so I'm down in there a little bit, and what we want to do is bring the plunger up like so. Let it sit for just a second so the bubbles can come to the top and then lift. And that gets all the air out of the bottom, and now we can bring it up. And the trick to this is, there the bubbles just got to the top. That works. Now we'll push it down like so and bring it up a little bit more. Like that. And when you set this for full, always have the plunger all the way in. So this is far in as it goes, so that you don't have a problem with having too much oil in there, because as this compresses, so as this goes up, this oil level drops. And it drops because you're pulling the mass of this shaft out of this oil area. So when you bring it back down, you lose oil capacity. In other words, what I'm saying is the extra shaft takes up space. So now that it's to that level, all the way down as far as it'll go, we're going to fill it up a little more because I don't want much air cavity at the top. You have to have some. Let's not have a lot. So there we go. I like it right there. Let's put this on so we don't spill it on the desktop here, like so. All right, so now we're right where I like to be. See how it's right at the top here? That makes a pretty big difference. And notice how it drops when you raise it up. That is normal, just like that. So on this, there's a little screw in here, and it's right here. And you can back this screw out, and this is a vent hole. Okay, so you get this little screw out, there's a vent hole right there. If you overfill this, you can lay this on its side, push the plunger in, the excess will come out here, so you don't have to take it all apart. So I don't need to do that because I've got the right amount sitting there. So I'm just going to leave it loose just till I get this threaded on. So we'll get this threaded on there. Be careful not to cross thread it. Run it backwards till you feel it click in. That's the threads finding the threads, so it goes on easy. You shouldn't have to struggle with this. Nice and easy. It's because it has to find those threads. Okay, so we're still sitting with the shaft all the way up in there. And don't adjust this unless you need to adjust that. You want to hold on to the barrel and get it close like this. Now let's take it out of here like so, and see how there's a thread gap here? You definitely want to crank this down and get rid of that gap. This is designed to go on this way to prevent the leakage. Right there. Now it's all the way down and it feels good. There's no air bubble anywhere in it. This one's ready to go back on the truck. But before we can do that, we want to push this all the way up, like so. And we need to tighten this back up because we did loosen it so any expended extra air could come out of there. Just snug this down, but don't torque it hard. Just snug it down till it's tight. If you torque it too much, you'll pull the threads and the top of this will be junk. So you have to be real careful with that. And now we have just the right amount to where this travels smoothly. There's no air bubbles in it. Let's put the spring on. So we're going to go ahead and slide this over here, and we're going to retract it. Now this one has that little piece of black rubber on there. You need to pull it down and then slip the retention collar on and seat that. And this is now good to go. All right, now so we got into this one, and we weren't going to do this on camera because they were all about the same, but we got into this one and this bottom piece is way backed off. Now these are aluminum and this is aluminum, so it's really difficult to get these to stay sometimes, and you could use Loctite on it, but this would have to be absolutely dry for that to work because the oils would defeat the Loctite to some degree. I don't think I got these tight enough when I built them. Also, we're not tight enough up here at the top, so this one I just didn't get it together well enough when I put that one together. The other one here, this one's loose at the top, and that explains that, so we'll get that one fixed. This one here, this one is actually in really good shape. It's not wet, it's nice and tight up here at the O-ring at the top, and in the bottom down here it's nice and tight as well, and this one is working properly. There's no issues with that one. Now the back ones have the springs compressed farther, so we can tell which one's which. These are the front ones. We just rebuilt this one, and we're going to tear into this one next. I won't show you this on camera because it's pretty much the same thing I did on that. I just wanted you to see that this one is bad in 2 locations, and that explains the leakage. This one is bad in 1 location, and that also explains the leakage. And the problem with that is the reason this wound up this way is as I was tightening them up before when I was working on these, I got some resistance there, and I felt like that was maxed out, but it's not. It lies to you. You got to get them down, and it takes a little pressure to get them past the O-ring. So that's what it requires. So that's what we're going to do on these 2, and we'll do that off camera. All right, so I'm going to show you something that's, well, it's helpful, so that's why I'm going to show it to you. But what we're going to do here is we're going to check everything anyway. So we're going to go ahead and take it apart, just like always. Okay, we're going to go ahead and test this area and make sure this is snugged out because we have it here anyway. So let's go ahead and check it. It did tighten up a little bit, so that's good. All right, so now you can see this gap here. Let's take this apart really quick and see about what's inside. There we go, like that. And the oil is low in there. So let's get some oil in it. And on this one, we're going to fill it a little bit full here. And this is what that little breather cap is for. So we're going to thread this back on. And it looks pretty close. Let's give it just a little more for this example here. There we go. All right, so we're full up, and we're going to put it back together here. And it is all the way in, which is where it needs to be. We'll get this started. And this has flat spots on the sides here. You'll have to back this collar off to get on it accurately. To get on it like so. And then you can take one of these and use a larger version of this so you're not using the little tiny one. Get everything in place, and you can thread this right on like so. And you need to run it all the way up. There we go, seated really nicely, just like that. Now let's do a little cleanup around it. We'll clean up here. There we go. Now, when you push this in, you may get resistance, and that'll cause this to come back out. See there? Okay, so you back this screw off like this, and we're going to take this screw out now. Oh. Okay, so I've got the screw. Be real careful not to lose that. And what we're going to do is we're going to push this all the way in, and we're going to compress that little black rubber thing at the bottom there, that little spacer, and we're going to put this back in. And what this does is this allows the extra air out of it. And like I said before, be really careful not to over tighten this, because you got a lot of grip with your tool, and that's a really tiny screw, so it feels like you're not all the way down when you can be. Just make sure that your bottom all the way out, and it'll go just like that. Now we're going to put it back together and pull this out like that. Put our collar back on, and there we go. Everything's tight, no air cavities. All right, with that done, now we need to do a little cleanup on the tires, and we wiped down the chassis. It doesn't look too bad, so I don't think we have to clean that up. But the tires are definitely a mess, and shock oil can be detrimental to rubber if you leave it on there, so we definitely want to get that off. However, we have gone through these shocks before, and when we rebuilt them and everything, we thought we had them together good, and I personally worked on these, and I thought I had them snugged down good, but I didn't. And even people that have been in the hobby a really long time can make these kind of errors, and it doesn't hurt every now and then to just check all the fittings on your shocks and make sure that they're where they should be. If you see any kind of leakage or anything like that, you should inspect your shocks right away and have a look at them to see if it's something you can simply tighten up. All right, now the tires are clean. We got them all shined up and they're looking really good. They're not completely dry as far as that goes, but it'll work in the short term. Once you get some dirt on them, the next time you clean them, they'll be really good. But we did get most of the oil off, and we used our regular blaster silicone to clean everything up. That works really well on that. And then you wipe it down and let it dry, hit it again. Pretty straightforward, easy cleanup. Try not to get a bunch of water in the vent holes because that's bad for the foam on the inside, so you definitely want to try and keep that dry. We didn't do them on the car, we cleaned them by hand, and that made a big difference. Now, let's get those shocks back on the rig. And on this one, we have a bit of an issue because of this tower. Now, we could take the tower off to allow the tool to get in there, but it's easier to just get a smaller wrench that fits in here, and this takes a little time, but we'll just run it in by hand. So now all the shocks are in place and it looks pretty good. Let's give it a test. No air cavities. No air cavities there. No air cavities on that one. So all in all, it feels pretty good. Let's get the tires in place. All right, so there we go. That's the repair on those. And you know, if you're new to the hobby, this can seem confusing and whatnot, and that's why we do these videos. We want to help the new people understand what it is they're working with, and sometimes even the seasoned veteran can do stuff that's a little bit under standard, and at the same time, it's easy enough to fix if you know what you're doing. These went together pretty easily, and these are pretty much how most of them are built. There are some different ones out there, don't get me wrong. There are some weird plastic ones that come apart completely different, but for the standards, as far as 6S and bigger go, this is pretty much the way they're done. And it's not that hard to do, really, if you know what you're doing. And I'm glad we're able to build videos like this to help you do this when you need to. If you haven't already, don't forget to bash that like button and help our content spread. You know, these are fun videos to do. They are time consuming to make because bench videos usually take extra effort. But in order to help the community, we're willing to do it. If you have anything you'd like to add to this video, please feel free to get in the comments down below and help others along the way. For AJ Jam Studios, I'm AJ saying, keep ranching.